Hi, everyone, and welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Ferzan Ahmed. Since 2019, he has served as Executive Director of the Ohio Turnpike and Infrastructure Commission. He also serves on the IBTTA Board of Directors and is co-chair of the Task Force on Diversity, Social, and Racial Inclusion. Ferzan began his career in 1992 at the Ohio Department of Transportation. In 2011, he was appointed Deputy Director of ODOT District 6, where he oversaw all ODOT activities in 8 counties in central Ohio. In 2016, he left ODOT to become the administrator of Delaware County, Ohio. Before joining the Turnpike, Ferzan served as Vice President and leader of AECOM's Ohio Transportation Practice. Ferzan, welcome to Café IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Good morning, Pat. I am honored. I'm a huge fan of the Pat Jones Show, and I'm honored that today I'm your guest.
Well, I'm honored to have you. And this is Café IBTTA, where we drink coffee or tea or your favorite drink of choice, and we talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And to start, a couple of announcements. This morning, we introduced the new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award Program. We announced it today by email, and it's also on the website, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes with Ferzan. Also today, the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works is holding a hearing on long-term solvency of the Highway Trust Fund and Surface Transportation System Funding Alternatives Program. IBTTA submitted a statement for the record, and we'll post it to our website so you can see what it says. Well, we are taking your questions and comments for Ferzan, and we want to get started right away. We want you to get started. So using the chat function and selecting the option all panelists and attendees, please type a word or phrase that describes the way you think or feel about the state of Ohio. All right? Tell us about the state of Ohio. What are your thoughts and feelings about the state of Ohio? Go Buckeyes. All right.
There you go.
Buckeyes, Ohio State. I may be biased, but I love it. My heritage. Bengals, Super Bowl champs 2022. Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting. Good prediction there, huh? All right. Round on both ends and high in the middle. Okay, love it, love it. Family, home, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Go Browns, go Bucks. All right, this is great. Thank you for joining us in the conversation. Yes, the Cleveland IBTTA 2005 annual meeting, one of the best annual meetings ever. You got it. Well, we are going to be taking your questions and comments. And while we're waiting for you to send in some questions and comments that pertain to Ferzan, I'm going to pose a couple of questions myself. So Ferzan, tell us a little bit about your career and how you wound up in your current position.
Pat, completely by accident. I'll be honest with you, I had no interest in engineering. I am an engineer by my education, and after high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And my father, being the wise man that he is, insisted that I go to America and I study electrical engineering. And I had no interest in electrical engineering, but he picked that. He thought that's something I would do well at. So I made a deal with him. I said, fine, I'll do that for you. But when I something else for myself. Let me tell you, it's very hard to study something as challenging as electrical engineering when you've got no interest in it. But I stayed with it. I did my duty. I kept my promise and I got my degree. But after that, I wandered all over the place trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a living. I was in New York for a couple of years and then moved to Ohio and ended up working for the Ohio Department of Transportation as an engineer in training. And they wanted, because of my background, they wanted me in the highway lighting and traffic department, but I did not have an interest. I got an opportunity to be in the construction department. In my early years in America, when I first started out as a fresh immigrant, I was a construction laborer in Brooklyn, New York, building sidewalks. Oh. So I had a natural affinity for construction. I say it's in my blood. So when they gave me an opportunity to be a trainee in construction, I took it, and that worked out for me. I was there for about 15 years as a construction manager for ODOT District 6, excuse me. And then I was transferred into the design department, and I slowly made my way to becoming the deputy director of that district. After a few years at that job, I was just feeling a little too comfortable, and I thought it's time to do something different. And the opportunity to be the county administrator was very attractive to me because it was everything except infrastructure. So in that capacity, I was working with social workers and judges and the auditor and the sheriff, and just to learn a lot about local government and how it affects people's lives. AECOM was a great break from government. I wanted to get some private sector experience, and Dan Manilowski and Jeff Heilstedt at that time and Kevin Cornish took 3 of them to supervise me. I guess I was a hard guy to supervise, but we had a great time working together in Ohio. I got to know our Attorney General while I was at ODOT many years ago. Wonderful gentleman, and we stayed in touch with each other. And guess what he does? He decides he's going to run for governor, and he wins. Because he is who he is, and because I knew him, I expressed an interest in serving in his administration. And I got a phone call in which I was told, you are going to the Ohio Turnpike, and that's how I ended up here.
That's great. What a great story. I guess it helps to know some people, and it helps to be in the right place at the right time. So you're at the Ohio Turnpike. You just celebrated an anniversary, 2 years in February. A lot of people have driven the Ohio Turnpike. I see some maps behind you. Tell us a little bit about the Ohio Turnpike. Give us a sense of the scope and scale, the people and the technology.
So I'm from Central Ohio, and the Ohio Turnpike is in the northern part of the state, all the way from Pennsylvania to Indiana. And before joining the Ohio Turnpike, my interaction with the Turnpike was very limited. While at AECOM, the Turnpike was my client, so I had come here a couple of times to meet with my predecessor and the chief engineer, but I'd only driven on the Turnpike once or twice. I didn't know much about it at all, other than the fact that it was my second biggest client, which was, of course, very important. Now, once I got here, I said, okay, I got to figure out what this is. It is government, it is infrastructure, but it's not ODOT, it's not Delaware County, and we got to figure out how this thing's going to work. I was really, one thing that really got me about the Ohio Turnpike is it's a very self-sustained unit. Ohio, every turnpike is different. In Ohio, the way our commission is set up, the Attorney General does not represent us. If somebody sues us, we have to defend ourselves. The Department of Administrative Services does not take care of our HR needs. We have to take care of ourselves. So it's a self-sustained government unit. And I tell you what, that is challenging, but I love it. I love it because it forces all of us across the Turnpike to work together, because these are our solutions. We can't go and pass it on to another agency to solve it for us. Something happens, we got to take care of it ourselves. So whereas the projects are smaller, the budgets are not as big as what I was used to in the past, the scope of work is bigger than anything I've ever done, because there's no one I can go to. It's my team right here. We got to figure it out and solve it.
So, Ferzan, you mentioned earlier, you're an immigrant. You're from Pakistan, and you took an interesting journey to get to the United States. Tell us how you came to be in the United States.
Yeah, we were living in North Africa. My father was working for the government of Bangladesh in Algeria. So my parents are from different countries. Mom was from Pakistan, dad was from Bangladesh. Once upon a time, they were the same country, but there was civil war and they broke up. So I was there in 1982, and I was going to college studying electronic engineering. And that's when dad made the decision, you're going to go to America. And I went to the American Embassy to figure out how to get a visa to come here. And this is 1984, so there was a book about this thick. I wasn't going to do that. So I stood in front of a map, covered my eyes and put my finger out. My finger landed on Kansas. I figured if I'm going to go to America, heck, I don't know anything about America other than New York is here and Los Angeles is there. I might as well just go and take a chance and figure it out. So I opened the book to Kansas. I saw that the Kansas State University was in Manhattan, Kansas. I'm gonna show my stupidity right now. I actually thought Manhattan, Kansas was a suburb of Manhattan, New York. So I said, that's where I want to go, and that's where I ended up. But it was a beautiful place. I loved it. I've lived in Manhattan, Kansas, and Manhattan, New York. I consider Kansas to be my home state, but now Ohio is home.
Beautiful, beautiful. Our guest today is Ferzan Ahmed, the Executive Director of the Ohio Turnpike and Infrastructure Commission. We are taking your questions. Please put your questions in the chat function using all panelists and attendees. Ferzan, let's talk a little bit about the Task Force on Diversity, Social, and Racial Inclusion, of which you are co-chair. Tell us a little bit about how that task force came about and the things that it's working on today.
So, you know, all the turmoil and all the negativity that we saw, all the racial violence that we saw in our country in 2020, I think it affected all of us. We saw what was going on. And at that time, our president, Sam Johnson, a great friend, great human being, decided that as an organization, we should do something about it. Organizations are powerful. And the reason why organizations are powerful is because organizations have leaders, and leaders are in a position to affect change. I can only affect change within the Ohio Turnpike. Pat, you can only affect change at IBTTA, but working together with our colleagues, we can affect change that transcends our industry, that breaks down borders, and ultimately it does end up making a change in society. That was his vision. That was Sam's vision. And I was very honored that I was one of the people that he reached out to be a co-chair, and said, absolutely, this is something near and dear to me. I've been very blessed in Ohio. There have been a number of firsts associated with me in Ohio in terms of the first immigrant to do this, the first immigrant to do that, but that means nothing unless there's a second or a third or a fourth. Right. So that stop talking about the firsts. And one of my mentors here in Ohio told me that the only way you can do something about increasing diversity is by taking deliberate, intentional, and gutsy decisions. So you got to make those decisions and say, I am going to increase the diversity in my organization. You'll get some pushback, but you just have to do it. That's what it means to me. And you know, I think you can hear it. There's a lot of conviction in what I'm saying. This is not business as normal for me. This is something I believe in. And what's really great about our task force is that when you listen to the people in our task force, my co-chair, Joy Dean, and I, we just sit back and listen to them. They've got way more passion than we expected them to have. They got more passion than we have in terms of getting things done. So, you know, you mentioned that, and you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation that the awards are up. I'd like to take this moment to plug that. All the organizations, you know, you are doing something in your organization. Don't be shy. Don't think that your project may not win the award. You got to submit. And here's what I'm going to do. You know, when we're going to pick one, you know, there'll be one person who's going to win. I hope that we get 20 or 30 submittals. Obviously, one person's going to win. But here's what I'm going to do. Everybody, now I'm nobody. I'm not anybody famous or rich or anybody. But just to show you how much I care about this, for everyone who submitted, and if you did not win, I'm going to call you and I'm going to talk to you about it. What are you doing in your organization, and how can everybody else within the organization help to grow your program beyond winning, because just about making it more successful? So that's what this means to me. This effort means to me. We're going to make a difference, all of us together, and we just have to do it.
Ferzan, we're showing a slide here that talks about this brand new award that the task force developed, and this has been some months in the making. And you know, everything this task force does is a little bit of breaking new ground. It's exploration. It's trying to figure out, you know, how can we do the next right thing? And I love that the task force has come up with this award, and it's distinct and it's very focused on efforts that agencies and others are taking to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think today's the beginning of the application process, and I think the deadline is about 2 months from today, June 14th. And really, we do hope that you will submit your project. And and here's some of the, here's some of the topics that that the task force is looking at. Just take a look at that and think about your own organizations and the kind of work that you're doing. Well, we've got some questions rolling in here, and I had one. Let's see. Gina Murray asks, what would you say is the most surprising discovery IBTTA has made with the newly organized Task Force on Diversity, Social, and Racial Inclusion? Most surprising discovery. What do you think about that?
For me, I think the most surprising discovery, in a pleasant way, was how many people wanted to get involved. We didn't have to go. We didn't have to go and find people. I want to do this. I want to participate. I want to help. And then from the very first meeting, everybody's active. Nobody just sits back and waits for others. I think that's the surprising, pleasant discovery, I would say. What do you think, Pat?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of energy in the task force, and people want to do something. It's almost like when somebody is in need, you have a friend who's in need, and everybody in that friend community comes running and wants to help. And that's the feeling I get from the members of the task force. There's a question from Carrie Witt. Are all member categories eligible for this new award, associate and sustaining? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We do have the requirement that you've got to be a member of IBTTA, but other than that, anybody who's a member of IBTTA can be eligible for this.
Pat, I'll just throw in that even if you're a member of the task force, you can submit. We just recuse. Ohio Turnpike may make a submittal. I'll make sure I'm recused. It's not so we should not be shy about that.
All right. Yeah, keep your questions coming in about this new award, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award. And I see that Terry has posted the link to the description and the requirements for the award on our website. So yeah, so keep your eyes open for that, and please do submit. Well, let's see. Rush Wicks has a question about noise mitigation. I've read on the Ohio Turnpike website FAQ that they do not install sound walls along the route. Have alternative measures been taken? What do you say about that, Ferzan?
A great question. Very good question. Thank you. And timely question, because I was asked this question a couple of times yesterday. So the Ohio Turnpike is a non-federalized highway. We do not get any money from the federal highways. And the way the noise wall laws work with Federal Highway Administration is if the facility, such as the road, predates housing development, then really it's up to the housing development to build it. Several years ago, we widened the Ohio Turnpike, and when we widened it, I'm talking 20 or 30 years ago, there was no development near the turnpike that needed mitigation. In 2013, we did some work with the Ohio Department of Transportation, and at that time, there was a program introduced by the Ohio Department of Transportation to do some noise mitigation along certain parts of the turnpike. ODOT had used federal funds to allocate some amount of money towards that, and unfortunately, that money is gone, and the program no longer exists.
All right. Thank you for that question. Ferzan, let's talk about COVID-19. This is a question we've had for a lot of our guests. You, when we spoke earlier, you expressed concern about the fear and uncertainty that people have under the conditions of a pandemic. Talk about what you've done at Ohio Turnpike.
I'll talk about how we approached it way in the beginning, and then our ongoing. And way in the beginning, we started talking about how we're going to, what is the. I'll tell you exactly what I told my team. I said, what happens when the ship is sinking? Well, you got to stay alive, and you got to get everybody on a lifeboat. So you have to first you got to get them on the lifeboat. Then we got to figure out where we're going to go. I said, so we have two goals right now. Let's keep everyone safe, and let's keep the operations going, because we got to keep the revenue coming in. And then we'll figure out how to manage if this is long term. As this grew on, we started thinking about people's fears. As far as people's fears about their health and so on and so forth, there's really not much we could do about that. But what I did not want was people to be concerned and afraid of their jobs. So we made sure that we got the message out to our people that, hey, look, your jobs are good. You're going to get your full paychecks. We're going to come through this. And once we made that decision, we just made sure that we kept everything open. Our service plazas, we had to rearrange the operations because the restaurants were shut down, but we kept the service plazas open and provided food 24/7 in one way or another, and increased the frequency of the cleaning, because to us, that was no longer a matter of convenience for the truck drivers. It was also a matter of safety. We worked very closely with the Ohio Truckers Association, and literally it was the trucking that was driving the economy. You know, we are not a commuter route. We have a pretty high percentage of commercial traffic here. And as the passenger traffic went down, the commercial traffic did not go down. In fact, it was up for a while. So we made sure that we took care of them and their needs. We've from the operational perspective, we have not really suffered much other than that one chunk of money. It's a one-time thing. It's bigger than what we suffered back in the credit crunch. In the credit crunch, it was about 5% for us. This time it was about 11%, so a little more than twice as much. But I tell you what, this year has been great. 2021 has been great. Our numbers are looking really good, and I feel very good about 2021. Our state is not completely open, but it started off very well.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. You know, the last year has brought a lot of change. The lockdowns, the working from home, all the changes that you've had to make in your operations. Some people are afraid of change, but I take it not you. You're sort of someone who embraces change. Tell us more about that, Ferzan.
Change is, I love change. It's easy. I don't find anything hard about it. I did my 4 years of high school in 3 different countries. And in the second and third country, I didn't unpack my suitcase. I did have a closet where I was living, but I did leave some of my stuff in the suitcase because I knew when I'm done, I'm going to move again. And my career has all been about change. Here's what I'm going to say about change. That's what we've been taught. Everybody tells us that change is hard. Change is hard. It's hard to take. But let's think about our own lives. Let's forget work for a minute. Let's think about our own lives. Let's think about our relationships with our spouses, with our children. Let's think about growing up, our friends. When have we not encountered change? When have we not tackled it and thrived in change? Right. We have allowed society to convince us that change is hard. When I submit to you that there's nothing hard about change, you have to just accept it and move with it and do the best that you can. And when it comes to pandemics, let's take the pandemic out of the equation right now. I've been in America since 1985, and I've seen 3 things that disrupted everything: the Gulf War, the .com issue, the credit crunch, and now the pandemic. So someday, 10 years from today, something else is going to be there, and we'll have to deal with that too. We just there's a saying in Persian, translated into English: we must never wish for the oceans to remain still. We must learn to swim in rough waters. That's what life is all about.
I love that. I love that quote. Say that one more time.
We must never wish for the oceans to be still. We must learn to swim in rough waters.
That's beautiful. So speaking of change, you spent some time in New York before you came to Ohio, and there was maybe a little bit of a culture shift or some resistance or some friction that you felt when you came to Ohio. Tell us about that.
I hit a brick wall when I came to Ohio in 1992. Life had been good in Kansas and in New York, and then I moved to New Jersey for a while. When I got here, New York is a tough place. Working as a laborer early on in my career, and then later on I became a fast food executive. But in New York you have to be out there. You have to survive. And I'm a Punjabi, growing up from Pakistan, and we are very emotional people. And Ohio is so nice. Ohio is laid back. We have Midwesterners. We are very laid back and quiet and kind of subdued. And I just didn't get along. I had a really tough time fitting in, and it took me, I was a trainee at ODOT for 3 years. The training program is 1.5 years, but I was a trainee for 3 years because I just couldn't get a promotion. Everybody else was getting promoted above me. And I figured out, it dawned on me that why should they have to adjust for me? I'm the one that's different. I'm the one that needs to figure out that I'm the new guy in this place. And perhaps I need to assimilate, and I need to be more. I need to maybe toned down my attitude a little bit. And when I learned to adjust my speed to Ohio's speed, things did start working out for me. And I tell you what, I would never leave Ohio. This is my home now. My wife and I were talking just the other day about where we wish to go when we retire. Right here. We travel, but we're going to live right here.
So you mentioned how you were the new guy and you had certain things that made you different or unique. Tell us a little bit about how you identify the new people or the unique people, maybe the green people in the organizations where you've worked, and help to bring them along.
So when I started out, I was a construction manager, and construction is, we work in a male-dominated field, all of us, the infrastructure. And construction management is not something where you find somebody from the South Asian subcontinent. We do very well in offices and behind computers. So I was not received very well as the guy who's going to run the construction project. But I have learned from those experiences, and I've learned. When I go out and within the organization, I look for people who are kind of sort of quiet. I look for people who are kind of sort of sitting in the back, and I like to draw them out. There are times when I'll do one-on-one with someone, talk to me. What do you want to get from this organization? What do you want to get from your career? What can I do to help you out? And that's I do that intentionally because I know that I was there, and it took 3 years before somebody took an interest in me and said, "Hey, I want to help you out, and I know you want to be in construction, and I'm going to give you a chance." So, the only way you can pay back people who have helped you is by helping others when you're in a position to help others.
Ferzan, you're a big believer in setting goals and structuring people for success to achieve those goals. And on the Ohio Turnpike website, you identify some guiding principles, and you also identify the metrics to see how you're performing against those guiding principles. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. You have to know how you're doing. You have to have a scorecard. It is very easy to do in the private sector. It is hard to do in government, but not impossible. So we, in 2019, in September, we brought together all of our leaders in a professionally facilitated session, and 5 guiding principles were outlined: safety, customer experience, quality of work life, system conditions, and financial stewardship. And under each guiding principle, we have got metrics that can be measured. And the way we set up our metrics is it doesn't just talk about the organization, it also talks about the decision makers. So what I ask people is, if this organization is doing well, is it doing well because of us or in spite of us? So the organizational metrics must be tied into the performance of the leaders and the managers, and that's what we have done. My goal at that time was to have them published on our website in 1 year. So that would have been September of 2020, and then comes COVID, and we're working remotely. Let me tell you how proud I am of my team. We were 2 months late. Despite all of that, despite the COVID and working remotely, instead of September, November 2020, we had our metrics online available for the public to see. And now next year, we're going to take it to the next level. We're going to start drilling it down into managers' performances. Right now, it's the director's performance that is tied to the metric that they're responsible for. My performance is tied to the organization's metrics, but we're going to start drilling it down to individual managers, and that can be done. You can even do it for things like HR, even though it's hard to measure the performance of HR. But if you sit down and look at the organizational mission and look at the function of each person, you can tie them together.
That's a great model, and it's very transparent. If other people want to see what you're doing, they can go directly to the website and click down and see the whole flow, the whole cascade of the guiding principles and the key performance indicators, right?
Absolutely, they can. And this is a living, breathing document. Once a month, we look at that to make sure that it's still relevant. We don't want just to be activity. We want this to mean something. And then we decided that once a year, we're going to look at all of our metrics and see if we are doing the right things, if we are measuring the right things. You can measure anything, but are you measuring the right thing? And is it still relevant?
Beautiful. Ferzan, I'm going to make a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to come back to you for some final words of wisdom. So don't forget to complete the survey at the end of today's Café IBTTA. We want to hear your thoughts on the future. And Café IBTTA is taking a holiday for the next 3 weeks. I know you're all going to be very sad, but we will come back. The next 3 weeks, we have the Finance Summit next week, the Board of Directors meeting the following week, and our Technology Summit in the first week of May. Café IBTTA will return on May 12th, when our guest will be Maria Moreno, Director of the International Department at AECOM, the Association of Construction Companies and Infrastructure Concessionaires in Spain. Maria also serves on the IBTTA Board of Directors. Thursday and Friday of this week, 2 more sessions of Lunch, Learn, and Pilot presented by the Emerging Technologies Committee working groups. And visit the IBTTA website for information about all of our upcoming events. Well, Ferzan, what final words of wisdom do you have before we sign off today?
Perhaps not wisdom, but gratitude. Pat, as you know, I'm a Muslim, and this is the holy month of Ramadan. It started yesterday, and Muslims across the world are fasting, and it is their way, it is our way, to show gratitude to God for giving us life and everything else that comes with life. So in this holy month, I pray for everyone and their families, exactly what I pray for myself and my family, and that is a life full of gratitude. Assalamu alaikum.
Beautiful. What a beautiful sentiment. Ferzan, thank you so much for being our guest today. It's been a pleasure. And to all IBTTA members, be safe, keep in touch, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, Ferzan. Thanks, everyone.